lynch you, but he did, and he lasted. I think he lasted about a week and a half.
You've got to be more of a fighter, and that's not him. That is what Mickey Antonio has been saying on some YouTube channel called The Filthy Fellas. Welcome back to the West Ham Network. Hope you are all safe and well. If you're new around here, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the thumbs up. And of course, leave a comment. And if you're interested in becoming a channel member, hit the join option. I'm here today to talk to you about Mickey Antonio's pure and utter honesty as a modern day footballer. And do you agree with it or do you not agree with it? I've had a few kind of moments to think about it. You know, he's doing the podcast, the Footballers podcast on BBC with Callum Wilson, and he says things, and I'm a bit like, is that the right time and the right place? I understand why you do it. I understand why he wants to do it. I understand why people would want to hear it. But when it's a player from your club, is it the right thing to do at the right time? Does that bring more problems internally or externally? Now, Antonio has delivered brutal honesty and criticism of West Ham teammate Gianluca Scamacca. Antonio was on the Filthy Fellas podcast, as you can see here from the picture, and he was questioned about the suitability for the David Moyes style of play, seeming to suggest that Scamacca will find it hard to succeed under David Moyes. Now, Scamacca has endured a tough debut season, scoring just 3 Premier League goals in 16 games and struggling with consistent form and fitness. Of course, he's been out injured since January. He has found the net 5 odd times in the Europa Conference League, but Antonio then spoke out and said that he's going to be honest with you lot on the Filthy Fellas podcast. He said he's actually quality. He is a quality player. Now, the Filthy Fellas podcast had actually said that Scamacca was one of the worst signings of the summer, but Antonio backed him up by saying he's got to be honest with you lot. He's actually quality. He's a quality player. He went on to say the problem is he can't play the way the gaffer, as in David Moyes, plays. He needs a different type of manager to play his type of football. He needs a manager where he can play and have other players come off him and stuff like that. You can see the ball comes into him and it sticks. He's tidy. But how David Moyes plays is more like if you're up front, you're dealing with scraps and you've got to be more of a fighter, and that's not him. Now, I don't know how I feel about comments like that. I don't know if it's the right... I don't think it's the right timing at all, because I don't think he directly is digging out the player. I think there's an indirect nudge to go, what, you know, it doesn't, I mean, it's very confusing to me that a modern day footballer is allowed to do this, if I'm being brutally honest. I would have thought the club would have wanted to have seen this, you know, material before it went out into the public domain. And we know that because we bring on some guests to you on the channel who are current players. Pedro Obiang, Diamante, we have to send the details to the club and they get a chance to talk us through all the sort of things, and you have to go through that rigmarole. But I don't understand why this potentially hasn't gone through it, because if I'm a West Ham fan and I'm seeing this point of view and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is a bit odd, then why do they think it's okay to put this out there? Now, like I said, Scamacca did find the net at the back of the net 5 times in 9 appearances in the Conference League, and he's been out with his knee injury since January. And he was brought in to offer competition to Antonio, who scored 5 league goals this season. But given his long-term injury, Moyes signed Danny Ings back in this January window, and that is potentially, or has done, pushed Scamacca further down the pecking order. But for me, I just think there's a time and a place when you do these things, and I get it makes really, really good stories, but I don't know if it's the right time for West Ham to be and our main striker right now saying things about him. You know, part of me feels like maybe Antonio wants to leave the club when I hear some of the things he says. He said at the start of the podcast, you know me, I'm going to give you brutal honesty, and I am going to tell you, I speak as it is. And I think that's fine to a certain extent. But I think also you've got to be a modern professional. And I don't think it's Antonio's fault. I think maybe there's something gone wrong at the club that allows him to do this and allows that content to go out, really. Because when I listen to it, it's really quite confusing. It really does confuse me. I back Antonio to the hills. I'll always do it. I back every West Ham player to the hills. You know, I back Scamacca to the hills. I think Scamacca's still got a bright future for West Ham if West Ham do, commit to keeping him. And also, do you know what? There's an element of what Antonio was saying that I agree with. So I'm not disagreeing with the comments that he's making. I'm disagreeing with the fact that he's speaking out during a season. Even if this was recorded a couple of weeks ago, the fact that it's been brought out now doesn't necessarily mean it's right. And also, you know, I don't know, like, you go into the changing room, what does Scamacca say? What does Moyes say? What do the other players say? Is it the right thing? I don't really know, because he doesn't just go into that. He talks about the style of play from David Moyes. I mean, what is he digging out Moyes from the style of play? Because he's saying things that we all know. He's saying things like Antonio is saying, like, our style of play, we tried to be a bit different. We brought in all these players. We tried to be a bit flamboyant. We were close to the Champions League. So we brought in all these new players and tried to adapt, and it didn't work. And we had to resort back to what we knew, which was to get results over the line. And he does give honesty, and it's nice and it's refreshing. But when it's about your club and it's during a season, especially just before a final, I just don't think it's the perfect timing at all. So if you haven't already, go and check out the Filthy Fellas podcast on YouTube. It's really good content from the guys. Of course, they've had Antonio. They've had a couple of current pros on their channel as well. So go check them out. But just let me know your thoughts. Let me know your comments. Like, is it the right thing to do? Was it the right thing to do? What does this mean for Antonio and Scamacca moving forward? What does this mean for West Ham and David Moyes and all of them going forward? You know, when he goes back into that changing room, what does David Moyes say? What does Scamacca say? What do the other players say? Are they happy? Are they disappointed in his approach? But like I said, I agree with what he says. I just don't agree that he is the person that should be saying that at the time that he has said it, because I think it really adds. Just that see if there's 1% of negativity coming from within that camp, I think that can snowball effect. And that's something I'm not a massive fan of when it comes to West Ham, because you want the dust to settle, you want everything to calm down, you want West Ham to progress. But I also think that part of me thinks, like I said to you, that maybe Antonio is looking for a route out of West Ham. Is this his way of looking for a different route out from the club? You know, he's been a great servant to us. Definitely, absolutely been a fantastic servant to West Ham. But is this his future? Does his future, you know, point in the direction of West Ham, or does it go everywhere else? He's 33 years old. He's West Ham's all-time goal scorer in the Premier League. He's been a fantastic servant, like I said. But to speak out and be so open and honest about your club at the times when we don't really need that, then I just don't think it's the right timing for me. It really isn't the right timing for me. Anyway, short, sweet one for you, just bringing you the information about Antonio doing the podcast and what he said about Scamacca and what he said about David Moyes. You know, pretty damning as well about the style of play. But equally, though, David Moyes did say that on the back of the AZ Alkmaar second leg win. He did say that, you know, we tried to do something this season, it didn't work, we had to resort back. But I think moving forward for us, change is coming. Just, it could be a lot, it could be minimal, but I think there's going to be quite a few changes made at West Ham this summer. Anyway, that's short and sweet one for you. If you're new around here, like I said, subscribe to the channel. Go and check out the earlier daily that Russ did for you, bringing you all the potential rumours and speculation or players he thinks West Ham should target in the summer, and then join us later on for the Hammers headlines. Take it easy, and of course, come on, you Irons.